We are fortunate today to have an outstanding Rotarian and a rather neat person with us. Corey has been working in media and marketing industry for over 20 years. He is the owner of Pardaman Productions, a media production company in Olympia, Washington. He currently serves as a teammate of mine as an assistant Rotary coordinator for zones 26 and 27, and is on the Rotary Big West New Club Task Force. I have learned over the last year that Corey is committed to full speed ahead, make it happen, grow Rotary, and solve problems. Ladies and gentlemen, Corey Lepardi.
Thank you. So if I had
Terry, do you have screen share
now I'm
on?
not muted again. Perfect. I do have screen sharing capability, and away we go. So again, thank you for having me here today. I'd love to be able to talk to clubs about Rotary and membership and all things like that. And today we're talking about hybrid club or virtual in-person meetings. So I wanted to make sure that everybody had my contact info, so my email's there as pardaman@yahoo.com. This way you can email me if you have any questions about anything after today's session. Today we're going to discuss what a hybrid or virtual in-person meeting is, different kind of tech setups depending on the club's needs, some tips for better hybrid meetings and how to engage online participants, and hopefully there'll be time to have a chance for you to ask some questions. So let's talk about what a virtual or in-person or a hybrid meeting actually is. So these are meetings that are held both in person and on Zoom in real time. So the key here is they're not passive experiences like you may have held meetings in the past, meaning we're not just sharing what's going on in the meeting, but these are active participant meetings. The whole reason for these VIP meetings is to support member engagement and retention and make sure that everyone in person and everyone online gets to enjoy everything the same way, or if not the exact same way, at least get the same value out of the experience. So at the in-person meeting, you're going to need a setup that's going to include laptops and a projector or an LCD screen, and you're going to need to make sure that your announcements and presenters can be clearly seen and heard by your online participants. You want to make sure that you're thoughtful about your agenda and how it's going to relate to your online as well as in-person participants. And it's going to require some extra personnel, a little bit of cost, and more setup than your club may have been used to in the past when you were setting up for regular in-person meetings. So your online participants are going to be interacting just like we are today, and the AV setup in the room is going to allow them to see and hear what's going on just as if they were there in person. Now this will create dynamic interactions with everyone who participates, but it's going to require using a paid Zoom account by the club. Rotary does offer a 20% discount still on those paid Zoom accounts, and you can find that at myrotary.org if you're looking for it. So let's take a look at the different setups you can use depending on your club's needs. So first is a simple setup like this club here. This setup is for small clubs under 20 members. It really doesn't require anything that you don't already have. The members who feel comfortable meeting in person can just bring their own devices and log in just as if they were at home. But the key here is that only one person has their audio turned on, or you're going to get some crazy feedback from the group. This setup also works just fine for most committee meetings. So if you're thinking about how to hold a virtual in-person committee meeting, this type of setup is probably the best bet for you. So the next is going to be a basic setup. You're going to use a projector and screen at your meeting venue or an LCD screen. You can use a cell phone on a stand pointing at whoever is speaking. You want to make sure that the speakers and people asking questions step up to the mic so that the at-home attendees can see and hear well. This setup works well for clubs in the 20 to 30 member range as long as you're not having a meal at the same time. Anytime you're having a meal and you're creating background noise, you're going to need a better audio setup than something basic like this. Now a more advanced setup like you see here, this is from last fall when Rotary One in Chicago was testing out hybrid meetings. So it's your typical projector and screen setup, but they also have multiple laptops, an audio and video mixer. They have cameras on tripods. This type of setup is going to require some pre-meeting setup. You're going to need a trained team to take care of that, and a little bit more, and we'll talk about that in a bit. You might even notice there that they've got a video mixer covering their inputs because they, like I said, had multiple cameras in a bigger room. So the final setup I wanted to talk about is if you have a venue or a member that already has a conference room setup with a Zoom room camera, this is going to allow up to 10 or so members to be in person, and then viewing at home members are on their devices just like they are now. The Zoom camera is going to move automatically to focus on whoever's speaking. It's good if you have that available, and it's a great way to jump into doing hybrids right off the bat when maybe you're still limited to how many people can meet in person. So now we're going to take a look at a demonstration of how you can have an interactive virtual in-person or hybrid meeting. The following material is from a video. It's from a group called the Global Impact Group. I edited it down. It's from a 30-minute demonstration video. This is going to give you an idea of the type of setup an average size club might use. I apologize if you haven't updated your Zoom account in a while. The audio may not play, and we'll do our best for those who aren't able to hear. But as long as I get enough thumbs up to know most people are hearing, we're going to proceed as if the audio is working fine.
This video shows one of 35,000 Rotary Club meetings taking place every week in 190 countries around the world with our 1.2 million members improving health, peace, our environment, education, and more.
Today is different, however. Today is a virtual in-person meeting.
This means that members may participate from the safety of their homes while connecting and speaking with members who are present at the meeting.
The Global Impact Group has teamed up with La Miranda Sunrise Rotary Club in California to create this video and to include a lineup of world-renowned speakers to tell a story of inspiration and aspiration for global health.
By the end of this video, you'll see both the simplicity
and the power of virtual connectivity.
For ourselves, for our communities, and for the world. Let's join our virtual in-person club meeting.
Welcome, Rotarians and guests, and greetings from La Miranda Sunrise Rotary Club at the garage of one of our members' homes. Today we have a landmark meeting for two reasons. First, we are being filmed to show how a virtual in-person meeting works, and second, we have a story of the history and future of public health with a group of world-renowned thought leaders joining us virtually across both space and time. I would like to introduce Jim Margroff to explain today's program and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Conrad. The purpose of today's meeting is to show Rotary clubs around the world how easy it is to add virtual connection to your in-person meetings.
We start with our basic laptop, projector, speaker, and screen. We connect our laptop to our Zoom meeting. Then we plug in a high-quality microphone and a webcam facing our in-person members and guests. Finally, your president faces their laptop towards themselves, and a Zoom master, in person or virtual, runs the meeting. This is the setup we're using for this video. So in review, all that's needed to run a VIP meeting, beyond the laptop, speaker, projector, and screen that most clubs have, is a microphone, a webcam, a second laptop for the president, and a third laptop for a Zoom master. And note that the president or Zoom master could be physically present in the meeting or remote connected on Zoom. Now let's provide some detail on the mic and webcam. We recommend a Blue Yeti omnidirectional microphone. When centrally located, it can capture audio from anyone speaking in the room and is the only microphone used. We recommend a Logitech C920 webcam given its cost, resolution, and field of view positioned next to the screen. Now let's provide some detail on Zoom settings for the three laptops. The club laptop must be configured in Zoom to use the external webcam and microphone. The president's laptop should have its microphone on mute and audio off. The Zoom master should also have their microphone on mute and audio off. Finally, the club laptop should be set to speaker view within Zoom, and the president should be on Zoom speaker view. The magic in this setup is that the webcam and mic allow remote participants to see and hear all in-person members, and in-person members can see remote Zoom participants on the screen. Proper placement of the webcam and mic allow anyone in person to step forward facing the webcam and screen and speak to all virtual participants while also being seen on the screen by in-person participants. If a club wants to accommodate more than 50 or even 100 people, depending upon the number of Zoom participants, a more sophisticated configuration can be used.
As our clubs resume meeting in person, we must continue to provide virtual access to support our most vulnerable members and to open our doors for greater inclusion, embracing our interdependence and our power of our common Rotary voice.
So that's kind of the overview of the basic setup. It works, like they said, with up to, say, 20 or 30 people in person, as long as you're not eating meals at the same time. So this image here is from Oak Bay Rotary Club in District 5020, where I'm from. When they were allowed to have hybrid meetings last fall, they were limited to 20 members per meeting in person, which was mandated by the hotel. They had several policies like no singing, passing of items, no handshakes or hugs. They did symptom checks, and they handed out hand sanitizer for everybody. When you're thinking about whether holding hybrid meetings, you should definitely have a discussion to make sure club members' needs are taken into account, as well as safety procedures, and you may even need to make some club policy changes to take care of what needs to happen at these meetings. So let's look at some tips for you to take prior to your hybrid meetings. You want to make sure you send out meeting invites well in advance, especially if your in-person meeting has limited attendance. Sometimes you may have to decide who gets to meet in person and who's meeting virtually, depending on the venue. Reach out to members who are Zooming to make sure they aren't having difficulties with Zoom. I'm sure most clubs are already doing that already. And also make sure you send out your agenda well in advance of meetings so members at home can follow along. And you may want to make sure that you test your setup also in advance. One of the keys there to sending out that agenda is, especially if you're doing a meal for the in-person, this gives the people at home time to maybe log in late if they don't want to sit around and watch people eat. We suggest coordinating times if you're having an in-person meal, that you have time for the meal and then you have time for the meeting. Those things really should be taken separately now. So some tips during your meeting. You want to be conscious to incorporate online members into the meeting. Make sure your speakers use the microphone. I know we all know those presenters that say they speak loud enough without it. This doesn't work for people who are Zooming in. They just can't hear. So make sure you can see the whole room with your camera or phone. And if there's going to be meals, like I said, background noise, you're going to need a more advanced mic system set up than just what we talked about in the video. And remember, keep your presentation shorter than you might have in the past, especially if your speakers attending virtually. They may be running off to another meeting, and it also is kinder to them because everything that's going on in person isn't necessarily everything that your speakers want to take advantage of. You probably need to have dedicated, let's see here. There we go. You want to make sure your space has either really good Wi-Fi or you have a dedicated Ethernet connection for each in-person advice. Your Zoom master is going to need to act as your virtual host or greeter. That is one of the keys to having the 3 laptops set up. That Zoom master ends up being very key to make sure that a hybrid meeting goes from being I don't know why that club is actually doing hybrid meetings to that was very enjoyable, I want to come back again. You want to make sure that you take all the COVID-19 safety precautions that your community and venue require, and also try to avoid meeting elements that only work for in-person attendees. I've also been noted that COVID-19 is not something that Rotary's insurance covers, so keep that in mind when you're building your policies in. So our zone has a tech team that can assist you with any further questions about hybrids. There's also resources on the zone website, and I also wanted to include the info for the group that created the video materials that were shown today in case you want to watch their longer 30-minute video. It includes not only the parts you saw, but also they had people from all over the world, current and past RI presidents, members of the World Health Organizations, all joining in on this one club small meeting. So With that remaining time left, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Make sure you unmute if you're going to ask a question.
I have a question about connection speeds. What range of connection speeds would you recommend, Corey?
Well, typically we don't worry too much. If your venue or your home can screen Netflix, then you probably got a fast enough connection speed for Zoom. So, you know, we're talking at least around probably 100 megabytes up, down, that sort of thing.
Especially when you're getting into 2 and 3 laptops all on like a hotel's internet.
If they're all on one hotel Wi-Fi, then I typically suggest some tests, and then sometimes you may have to have one of the devices connected to a phone service that provides the internet that way if the venue doesn't allow enough bandwidth to cover all 3 laptops.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Do you have any rough price points associated with the equipment, the various configurations that you identified?
Yeah, the pieces that were identified in the video are both in the $100 to $150 range. I've seen setups as low as, say, $250 for everything for a club, up to $5,000 if the club wants to get crazy and do multiple cameras and video and audio mixers. And some have even purchased $1,400 cameras that track people's talking, you know, like you would in a high-end classroom. I don't necessarily advise that unless the club really has a need for that type of, you know, equipment. As always found, especially when you're dealing with volunteers, the cheapest piece of equipment is the person you can put on the tripod or hold the stand, because their rate's free versus the expense you put into the equipment. That being said, you do want to make sure that you've got cameras that can see the room, or that you have a nice steady phone on a tripod so that you can pan it left and right, so the at-home viewers aren't getting sick from the camera moving around a little too fast. So I see Tony has his digital hand up, and then Ron has a physical hand. So Tony, let's, if you would, and then we'll go to Ron.
Thank you, Corey. I'm Tony Spear from the Catalina Rotary Club. And I just wanted to make sure I understood the roles of the 3 different laptops in a full-blown meeting. I think Zoom number 1, well, these are my numbers, I'm not sure yours match up, but that's the camera, that's the one that connects to the camera and a speaker and is logged in as a Zoom guest, strictly for the purpose of taking a picture of the room and who's in the room and recording the sounds. Correct?
Correct, and that also works as the laptop or computer that's hooked up to your projection system, whether it's an LCD screen or a projector and screen.
Okay.
So all of your tech runs through one system.
Got it. Okay.
Then you have a laptop that's set up on your podium or wherever your president, speakers, and so forth. And then you have a laptop that's your Zoom master that makes sure that the people that are at home, that are in their cars, don't get ignored throughout the meeting.
Understood. Look, I have more to the question.
Oh, sure.
So Zoom number 2, the one at the podium, that's also a Zoom guest, and it's strictly to get a picture of whoever's standing at the podium, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then Zoom 3, the Zoom master, that's the laptop hosting the meeting.
Correct. Yes.
And everybody is logging into that meeting set up at the Zoom master.
Yeah, and they could be in person or they could be at their home as well, depending on your setup. But yeah, you do need that. That's the person who's running the meeting.
And having the Zoom master off-site might alleviate some of the bandwidth issues.
It could, yes. Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, as long as that person is fairly tech savvy to know, you know, that there's some time delay and there's other issues. But yeah, you can definitely have that person off-site.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so let's see, Ron had his physical hand up.
Yeah, where can we get this PowerPoint or the recording?
So I will send the PowerPoint to Joe, and there is a copy of this presentation up on the Zone website as well that I can make available. I've given it a few times before and it's been recorded, and I think your own club president is recording it as well for you guys to watch.
I'm recording the meeting, and I'll put it on YouTube and put a link to it on our district website.
And for those who want a copy of the slides, you've already got Terry Bergman's email address. Send a note to her and I'll take responsibility for getting a copy to you then. Thank you, Corey.
Yeah. And I also have a couple of supporting documents that I'll send Joe's way as well that talk a little bit more about different equipment options and different setup things. I mean, what I found is there's not really one set of equipment that works for all clubs. Clubs are in different sizes. Clubs are meeting in different kind of venues. Some venues have part of the equipment, some have all of it, some have none of it. So, you know, the other thing is with technology, if I recommend something today and then 3 or 4 months from now you decide to hold that virtual meeting, it might not even be for sale on Amazon or a Best Buy. So there's the other reason why it's hard to quote a price or quote a piece of equipment. But I will send those along. And let's see. I thought I saw another physical hand. Bill.
Yes. Has any of the clubs who do this had trouble in which more people show up physically and few Zoom, or more show up Zoom and not very many physically? In other words, they don't have a very good mix.
So what I've experienced is if there is a cap to the venue for physical number of people, that cap is usually met. So if there's 10 people that can meet in person or 20 people that can meet in person, there's usually 10 or 20 people that want to meet in person, and then everybody else is required to meet online. So what those clubs have gone to when they can do that is create some sort of rotating list or do surveys to find out how many people they actually have that do feel comfortable meeting in person. Clubs that haven't been meeting at all in person, most of them have found that they're getting better attendance, especially if they have members that maybe travel. They've been getting better attendance just doing these types of all virtual meetings. So I saw Ellie had her hand up earlier.
Corey, do you use Switcher Studio? Switcher? We just started using that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. It is a piece of software that could be used. There's lots of different options there, and I guess I don't recommend one over the other because, again, it really depends on what the club's needs are. For clubs that are looking for, say, 2 or 3 cameras, because maybe their venue's got a bunch of pillars and they know that people are going to be sitting in different sections, or maybe they've even decided that they're going to rent out 2 separate rooms because they can only have 15 people in a room. And so they want to have a camera in one room and camera in another room. Blackmagic Design has got a relatively inexpensive plug and play video mixer that has little buttons on it. It works through HDMI. It's, I want to say, around $300. That's what I've been recommending to clubs to use because the hardwired nature of it gives it less of a chance to bog down if the computer speed is having issues. And that's one of the things with these type of meetings that we want to make as much of the work be done by physical people and by physical pieces of equipment than by electronic pieces of equipment, because things can get buggy. So that's why we offer the physical recommendation for a piece of equipment for mixing. But I mean, that's definitely a viable option, especially when you're doing things like live streaming of events and stuff like that. Those virtual switchers tend to work really well for those. So
thank you.
So looks like Buck threw some pricing in the chat for those people who wanted to know about the 2 items that we mentioned in the video.
Corey,
yes.
Quick question. Sorry, no camera on mine. Our club has been discussing ways to get active with like the Queen of Hearts, or chipping into a can type of thing.
Sure.
Are there any platforms or programs or software that you've seen used to kind of address that, like fundraising, if you will, that people can chip in as small as a couple of bucks or more if necessary?
So for like taking donations, happy bucks, that sort of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I've seen done a couple of different ways. For clubs that are on DACDB, some of them have used that systems portal to actually take payments that way. A lot of clubs have moved towards just using Square because you can set up an online shop through Square, take your regular payments with a card if you want to. You can take it on people's devices, and then they'll just say 2 or 3 times in the meeting, hey, we put the Happy Bucks reminder in chat, so go on there and make your donation. And typically people just click on that link in chat and they make it that way, especially if it's only a couple bucks.
Oh, great.
Joe, I see your hand still up. Did you have another question there?
I do. I have observed a couple of club hybrid meetings, and one of the challenges is when speakers move around. They want to mix with the audience, and a lot of times the fixed camera is showing their backside as they're moving around. Is there a solution to the a technology solution, or is it tie them to the podium?
Well, I mean, you're talking about 2 options there. One is to ask your speaker to be respectful of the people attending online and know that they're going to have to conduct things a little bit differently. The other is just to have multiple cameras. Maybe one of those cameras is a person who's logged into Zoom on their cell phone, and they've got it on a selfie stick or something like that. And when that person goes rogue, then your Zoom master switches over to that feed so that people can still see the speaker. That's probably the couple options you have there.
Thank you.
Yeah. I see Amy's got her hand up.
Thanks, Corey. Do you have any suggestions on how clubs have handled not having either the virtual participants or the in-person participants becoming a passive audience while all the interactions and connections and engagement that are happening are either in one or the other? Is there a way that you've seen, or multiple ways perhaps, to make that integrate a little bit more for, beyond the technology?
Right. I mean, that really is the challenge, and it's the thing that we're having the most conversations about. Some clubs are still handling it the way that they have tried to handle it, with just all virtual, meaning that the group that chooses to show up virtually gets put into some breakout rooms for some mingling beforehand, and then the people in person get to do their mingling there. The same with meals, right? Saying, okay, we're going to have 15 minutes early, that there's probably not going to be anything going on. So if you want to log in later on or eat at home and then log in, feel free to do that. And then, this idea about breaking into small groups, I have seen clubs that have found ways to break into small groups by just going, okay, we're going to take a laptop off in the corner and we're going to basically function as a small group that way with some of the online components while, other people in the room are meeting, and so maybe you've got a couple of extra laptops or an iPad or something in the room for days when you decide you want to break into smaller groups to do work parties or to workshop something or things like that. And then it's just being cognizant, right? And building your meetings out, knowing that maybe not everything you were doing a year or a year and a half ago really continues to work for the club the way the club's going to have to meet. And what we found is a lot of times those things weren't working for the people who maybe watched your video on Facebook or tuned in on YouTube, but you weren't thinking about them because the whole idea was, well, you just wanted to share this with people. It wasn't about meeting their needs. Well, now we actually have to think about how we meet their needs and maybe reorganize our meetings. I've also heard people say, well, how do I come up with that many people to run all the cameras and run everything else? And I say, well, you may have had a staff of 8 that was manning your check-in table when you were meeting in person before, but you've been going for a year now and none of those people have had a role. So maybe rethink the roles in your club and how meetings are held when you go back to doing these virtual hybrid. And maybe you don't need 4 people to take money for tickets and take donations to the foundation and to give high fives and to hand people out their badges. Maybe some of those jobs could be moved into these other jobs that better facilitate people that can't make the meetings in person. And I see Dave, Dave AJO.
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Where does one get training as a Zoom master? Or is there a program, or are there programs out there on YouTube? Or are any of the other clubs going to be addressing this?
Yeah, so there are lots of trainings on Zoom, and both the zone and a number of districts. I know mine in particular, we created a 45-minute Zoom training for people back when we were just starting to do more trainings like this online. So yes, there's definitely out there. If you want to email me directly, I'd be happy to send that out to you. I'm sure that we move forward. This material is going to hit our zone district membership chairs. So 30 district membership chairs and who knows how many district governors are all going to sit through the same sort of thing in not quite 2 weeks on the 27th. And then it's all going to start really spreading out into the districts. And I'm sure we'll then realize that we need more of this training, and that will be made available. But right now there's videos to handle it.